Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Did I say good morning? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Let the record reflect that Director Roberts is absent. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda tonight.
All right, may I have a motion?
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The agenda is approved. Moving on to number 2, public comment. Are there any members of the public in person that have a public comment at this time? No? All right, and I don't see any members of the public online. Let's see, community reports. I see Sam online. How are you this evening?
I'm doing quite well. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
I just have a brief update for the board today. First off, I want to start off with a highlight of the work our sheriff's deputies have been doing continuously with Operation Consequences throughout the county and especially up here in the desert. Continuing the work from Operation Hammer Strike, it really has been phenomenal work they're doing. Just the past few weeks, the operation seized upwards of 650 pounds of narcotics. Much of it was fentanyl, which we're happy to be getting off the streets here. Nearly 50 firearms were seized, about 4 of which were ghost guns, these more untraceable weapons that we're always happy to be taking out of the hands of criminals and trying to keep our streets safe. So I just want to emphasize that and thank our deputies for the work they've been doing on this. And on board matters here, yesterday the Board of Supervisors approved a project list for Measure I funding that's going to be presented to the County Transportation Authority. One project there included for the Phelan area was the previously approved traffic signal. It's going to be put up on Clovis and Phelan Road. So moving forward on that, we're always trying to keep an eye on projects in the Phelan area that we can stay on top of and make sure to update y'all. Additionally, just saw is going to be on the agenda for the upcoming board meeting on the 22nd of this month is ARPA funding that our office is working to secure for the community center project. So we're glad that that's moving forward in the process and is hopefully going to remain on the agenda for that meeting, and we're hoping to have approved via consent. So we're very happy to be able to get that moving forward and trying to help out the community in that way. Beyond that, that's all I have. As always, if anyone has any questions, I'd love to help however I can.
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you so much, Sam. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, everyone. You as well.
All right. Okay. We have no other community members, so we will move on to number 3, consent items. Does anyone have an item that they would like to pull? No? Okay. Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of the motion to approve the consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. There were no matters removed. No presentations and appointments. So we will move on to agenda item 6A. Second reading of ordinance 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste recycling and organic disposal requirements. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you, Madam President. The staff's recommendation is for the board to waive the second reading of first reading of ordinance 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste recycling and organic disposal requirements.
Okay. Any questions on this? No? Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll move to waive the reading.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. So we will move on to agenda item 6B, public hearing on ordinance 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste recycling and organic disposal requirements. I declare the public hearing on ordinance 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste recycling and organic waste disposal requirements, now open at 5:06 PM. May we have the secretary's report, please?
Yes, at this time, I'd like to report the district received 0 written protests, objections, or comments relating to ordinance number 2023-04.
Thank you. May we have the attorney's report, Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. A notice of hearing of the public hearing was published in the Victorville Daily Press on July 26, 2023, and August 2nd, 2023. A summary of the material changes from ordinance 2022-02 to ordinance number 2023-04 was published in the Victorville Daily Press on August 2nd, 2023. Notice of public hearing was also posted in the district office, the district community centers, and district website on July 24th, 2023. The ordinance was introduced to the board at the meeting on July 26th, 2023, where the first reading was waived by the board. The second reading of the ordinance was waived by the board prior to this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, on April 6, 2022, the board adopted ordinance number 2022-02, which established uniform collection of trash, recycling, and organics consistent with the mandate of SB 1383 that are designed to achieve the organic waste reduction goals established in section 39730.6 of the Health and Safety Code through a 75% reduction in the level of statewide disposal of organic waste from the 2014 level by 2025. The regulations created to reduce organic waste consist of various components, including providing an organic recycling service to all residential and commercial properties, establishing an edible food recovery program, meeting procurement requirements, tracking third-party organic waste haulers, creating education and outreach material, and conducting inspection and enforcement activities. Since adoption of ordinance 2022-02, a self-haul option was approved by CalRecycle, and therefore the ordinance was updated primarily to address that provision. Amending the ordinance will complete task 3 of the district's compliance order from CalRecycle.
Thank you, Mr. Bartz. At this time, we will open the public hearing up for public comment. Does anyone in person have a public comment?
I didn't write this stuff down, so I'll try to remember this. Okay, first question is, why are we putting our driver's license number and our, all that other stuff on that form that we're turning in? That's, a lot of people want to know that question. In fact, everybody I've talked to wants to know, why do I need to put my driver's license on a form saying I'm going to self-haul? Okay.
That's not related to this ordinance.
Well, we had to fill that paper out. I mean, how is it not related to?
This is the hearing on the ordinance revision. We are going to have a solid waste update later in the agenda, maybe.
Okay. Okay, so.
So if I think what she's trying to say is that if you have questions about the form that you're filling out for the self-haul, the solid waste and recycling, then we have a separate agenda item for that.
Okay.
If you want to wait until that point.
Okay, and so then also I have a lot of problems with when we do go to the county dump with the directions we're getting. Where would this fit in?
Same place.
Same
Same
place.
place? Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you so much. All right, and we don't have any other members of the public online for this. Okay. So may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So the public hearing closes at 5:10 PM. Thank you. All right, so we move on to 6C, Discussion and possible adoption of ordinance 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste and recycling and organic disposal requirements. Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Madam President. Staff recommendation is for the board to adopt ordinance number 2023-04, establishing uniform solid waste, recycling, and organic disposal requirements.
All right, does anyone have any questions or comments on this item? All right. All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, I will second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, the motion passes.
Madam Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Of course.
Would the board want to move item 6E, which is, I believe, where they would address their concerns, up to right now? Then if they want to stay for the other part, they can, but gives them the opportunity to be able to speak to the board without having to wait around for another 45 minutes or so.
Of course. Is that okay?
Do we need to make a motion for that? To change the agenda?
Mr. Kennedy, do they need to make a motion to reorder the agenda at this time?
No, they do not.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so everybody's okay with that? All right, so we will go ahead and move to 6E, which is update on solid waste program implementation. Ms. Sevi.
Yeah, so pretty brief update, and I'll get to the questions. We have 1,700 applications that we've received so far. CR and our staff is a little backlog, so it's about 3 weeks now if you're changing services or subscribing to service. Driver's license on the form. It's if you want to sign up for service with CR&R, they use that for collections. If you're not comfortable putting it on the form, leave it off. And that's it for the driver's license. And then you wanted to know about, I'm sorry, what was your other question? Oh, the problems with the dump. So the county controls the transfer station. We don't have any jurisdiction over how operations work out there. It's the county, and they contract with Athens to manage the dump. And I know they're going through contract negotiations right now to clean up operations there and to be compliant with the SB 1383 separation requirements. So that's ongoing. They haven't finalized that yet, but once they do, I would assume that it would get cleaned up out there. We've been hearing a lot of issues with operations out there, and we're forwarding it on to the county, and they just keep telling me they're working on it.
I called the county and said, I took an entire truckload of mustard grass, and they wanted me to pull over and throw it with a pipe truck.
Yeah, we actually had our Cal Recycle representative out here a couple weeks ago, and we took him on a tour, and one of the places he wanted to see was a transfer station, and he was pretty horrified to see everything going into one pile. So they took pictures. So I would assume that with Cal Recycle having seen that they're going to get it cleaned up operationally. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, we're telling everybody source separate when you self-haul, and then when you go there, they don't need you to source separate. So it's frustrating.
And so then also the receipts they give us, that ink is going to be on.
Yeah, take a picture. I'm going to talk to them about maybe they could upgrade their system, but they're slow to change things. I just recommend take a picture and then store it somewhere on your phone, maybe in a separate file.
What is the whole purpose of the receipt thing? 'Cause for me, I took just 2 bags of trash that I could lift, and it says on my receipt that I had 200 pounds worth of trash, and if I had paid, it would be $48.
Yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily doing the weighing for the punch cards because it's a upper limit for using it. And so, I don't know if you've been there recently, but if you go, they'll punch it twice. If you have double the amount of trash than you're supposed to take there. Yeah, I don't think they're going to weigh it right now anyways if you are just using your punch card. The receipts are for us because Cal Recycle does want us to prove to them that our self-haulers are actually self-hauling, which is why we have the form. Everyone asks, well, why do I have to tell you that I'm self-hauling? It's like, well, Cal Recycle wants to know the number of self-haulers we have, and we need to be able to get in contact with some of them just to do some auditing, statistical auditing of the receipts, just to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, because I mean, the whole point of tonight's ordinance, we were updating it to allow for the self-hauling, because originally Power Cycle told us we can't do it. And now they're like, you can, but we need for you to demonstrate to us that your residents are actually source separating and disposing of the trash properly. So that's kind of the whole reason behind it.
Yeah, I had colored bags, but they told me to all.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. I'm sorry. If you want to call the county too, squeaky wheels.
Is there someone we could contact in particular?
Yeah, I can,
You know,
I'll email it to you. It's just, yeah, I'll email you their contact information. And it's on our website too, under the solid waste area.
it's good to name one person.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been doing, so. Is there any other questions? And then the letter regarding the billing error for about the 800 or so accounts is going out by the end of the week. And hopefully we don't have that again, but it's moving along just slowly.
If the self-haulers have to take a picture of the receipt or different things, I know I use a dump card, and I did sign up for a self-haul. So when they hand them our dump card, they know our address, they know our APN, they know all that stuff. It's going into a database somewhere. I don't see why the county can't send you a tab-delimited form Excel spreadsheet with everybody's dumps that are going to be self-haulers, and this way we have the information.
I don't either, and I've met with them so many times
Yeah.
about this, and like offered to cost share for them to get it. The way that their system works right now is they can pull one record at a time, which I've asked them for. In 2017, I asked them for, I sent them all of our parcels, and it took them 3 months to send me the disposal data for the parcels in our district. It's just an antiquated thing, and I'm like, please, 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 just automate this. So you can just send me an annual report of everybody that utilizes this dump card, and then we can compare it to who has CR in our service, and anybody that's missing from our overall spreadsheet, then we can reach out to. But they can't do it, which is why we're doing the application and the receipts. The county themselves is even requiring receipts from Oak Hills residents, West Cajon Valley, all the other CFAs that they have, because they know that they can't even get the reports that they need from their own system.
Well, maybe Cal Recycle will help them develop a program that'll help us be in compliance.
That's on our task list. We asked them if they could help modernize that system. So I'm hoping with Cal Recycle kind of acting as an intermediary, it'll speed things up. And I think that it would be a benefit to the county as well. It'd save a lot of staff time.
They'll probably come up with some statewide registration form that you need to participate in now. But if they did it across the state the same, it would be really good if they had a form that everybody could use.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we will go back to 6D, discussion and possible action regarding proposed water rates. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you. We have Habib Isaac online. He was here a week ago, and we were reviewing some of the basic information to come up with a proposal for what the rates should be to keep up with the expenses. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Habib, and I'm sure going to be a very good interactive program here.
All right, thank you so much, Don. I appreciate it. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. I do have a presentation put together. Apologize for not sending out early. It was a quick turnaround from me being there last week to developing rates and showing you what the proposed rates would be. So give me 1 second. All right, let me get this out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple things that we went over last week, just to refresh your memory. So, but it's not going to be as detailed as last week's presentation. And then we're going to get into more the cost of service analysis. One thing you wanted me to do was bring forward the 2 financial plans and show rates for both. One being the full CIP and the other one being a reduced CIP, which is just funding the Chromium 6 improvements and the Civic Center. And so I'll provide that, but then I'm also going to discuss changes in the rate structure that we're recommending. And primary driver of that is the fact that you are in an adjudicated basin and you are, subject to your free production allowance reducing every year. So we want that rate structure to reflect and tell the story of what's going on with, your groundwater and your water master. So with that, let's go and get into this presentation. So again, starting with key assumptions, one thing that we talked about before was, you had 3 tiers previously, mainly because of the growers, and we wanted to make sure that they're paying their share of costs and the increased costs of having to purchase more water or turn on well 14. That has subsided. You had a little bit of usage in this fiscal year 2023, but we expect that that's going to go away. And from financial planning purposes, the usage that we're projecting, we're assuming none of it's going to fall into tier 3. It's going to stay in tier 2. So that's being conservative. You might still see a little bit of usage in like in tier 3 right now, but we should plan that that's going to go away or be so minimal you can't rely on it. And then some of the other assumptions, we are still anticipating for 24 and inflation at a high number, even though inflation has been coming down the last few months. On an annual basis, it's still fairly high, so we're using that for this fiscal year, 2024. But then outside of that, for capital, we are going back to a historical average of the five-year average of the Engineers News Record Construction Cost Index. And then for CPI, we're also ratcheting down to the 5-year average. We monitor and track those indices every year. And then for water supplies, whenever we are projecting that you're going to need to have some lease water from Mojave in 26 and beyond. If those rates increase more than what they are today, then we recommend you use the pass-through provision that's in the statutes that allow you to pass on any increases from a third-party agency to your customers that you basically don't have control over, and because you don't govern what they plan to do and their rate adoption process. And then lastly, here are your water supplies. We have your free production allowance. You do have some carryover that is going to allow you to not incur lease water from a hobby in 24 and 25. But then 26 and beyond, we do anticipate the need to purchase lease water to accommodate your total demand while your free production allowance is ratcheting down of your groundwater. So based on those assumptions, here's the current position of your financials, and this is with your proposed rate that you have on the books turned on, if you will. You have rates through 25, and then you'll see that this black trend line slopes up through 26, and then it flatlines based on you have no more rates that were noticed outside of that. But your expenses are exceeding your revenues, so you are generating an operating deficit, which is reflected in the red bars down below. So that's one thing we want to rectify. And then we also, with your capital plan, we do have the Civic Center and the share of costs related to the water enterprise, and that is through debt. And that $6 million is going towards the Civic Center. And then you have the remainder of your CIP, which is 18.6 million. Last time I showed you it was 21.3 million. The reason for that is we're actually accounting for your repair and replacement in your capital plan, but it's also in your O&M. So we took it out of the capital plan because that was really just to show you the detail. So this is the reserve balances. After you fund your operating, you absorb that deficit, and you fully fund your capital. Then that means you're going to have to use reserve full schedule. And then that's not sustainable long term because you're going to eventually deplete your reserves. And we want to make sure that your reserve balance, right now you're healthy. Even for this upcoming fiscal year, you'll be above your minimum, but we need to make sure we maintain that through the rest of the 5 years. And with Prop 218, you're only allowed to go out 5 years at a time with rates. So it's almost built in to come forward and go through this analysis again and be transparent with your customer base. This is the detailed CIP that we included. This is the section of repair and maintenance that I was talking about, where we're showing this in the capital plan so you see the detail. It's already in your operating budget. So that allowed us to remove that. So with that, we are able to show you a little bit lower adjustments on the high end. Last week, I showed you 18%. And because we removed this, since it's already accounted for in your operating budget, we're able to go to 16%, which I'll show you shortly. But ultimately, we need to make sure that we resolve the operating deficit. We need to make sure that you also continue to maintain your debt coverage. Your capital spending, one thing that we'll look at is reducing it, but that's another option. And then lastly, if we don't adjust rates, then you're not going to meet your minimum requirements starting in fiscal year 2025. The two financial plans I showed you last time, which I'll show you again, is the full CIP being funded, and then the revised CIP where it's just the Chromium 6 and the Civic Center. So here's where now instead of 21.3, it's 18.6. We have positive net income, so now that net income can go towards your capital spending and also replenish reserves. We have the same capital plan. Now we're able to maintain a healthy reserve balance above your minimum requirement and below your ideal target. And then to achieve this, because of that repair and replacement being captured in operating, we're able to achieve this with 16% adjustments. And I want to point out that 16% isn't 16% above your already noticed rates. We will be replacing your notice rates with this. So it's not above and beyond what's already been noticed. And then for the next capital plan, this is the reduced capital improvement plan where it's just a Chromium 6, the Civic Center, and then outside of this time period, then we're also just keeping up with your depreciation of your system in 27, 28, but we also are indexing it to account for inflation. So when we use $13.7 million, we have a little bit less than income because we have lower adjustments because we don't need to fund as much capital. The capital plan has been reduced. And then now we see a similar ending balances. In some years, it's even a little bit better. And then that's able to be achieved with lower revenue adjustments of 11%. So one thing you wanted me to do is bring forward, you wanted to see the rates at the full CIP, which is the 16%, and then also at this reduced amount of 11%. So with that, we're going to transition to the cost of service and also really talk about the rate structure revisions and then go into proposed rate. Does anybody have questions on that financial plan review?
Questions? No? Nope, we're good. Go ahead.
All right. So this is revenue requirements. I don't expect you to look at every single line item, but basically it's your direct costs of your water supplies and Chromium 6, your operating expenses, your debt, other funding that you have available, such as the transfer of property tax and other operating revenues, and then your net income that you need to achieve for your rate revenue. So that purple amount at the very bottom, that's the amount of revenue after accounting for your property tax, other revenue sources that needs to come from your rates. So in 24, at the full CIP, you need $8.1 million to recover for this fiscal year. And then it jumps all the way up to 14.1 by 2028. So going off of that, these are the components that make up that 18 or $8.1 million. And what we show here is on the left-hand side, this is what makes up your total fixed charges. We have account services, which is basically that cost is spread over all accounts evenly. So it's essentially, if you have an account, you get charged a base rate. And then we have costs associated with, capital, things of that sort, or debt, where it makes more sense to spread that cost related to capital based on the size of the meter, because the meter reflects the amount of capacity that the customer takes of your system. So bigger size meters are charged more in this component. Then we have premium 6, which is staying constant like it has been for a few years. And now on the right-hand side is your variable component, where now we're introducing purchased water, and that's pretty much going to be leased water from Mojave. But you'll notice there's no dollar amount here. I'm showing you the 2024 revenue requirement, and in 24, because you have carryover water, there's no cost incurred for leased water. There are also no costs incurred for leased water in 25. So what that means essentially is for 24 and 25, both tiers, or all your tiers could be served by groundwater. So then we have your groundwater component. After that, we have delivery, which is almost kind of like the base charge on the variable side, where every unit of water has to recover a portion of your operating costs. Then we have costs associated with peaking, where customers increase their usage during the peak season of summer, and then you have facilities that are sized to accommodate that. Then peaking is spread based on how customers' usage changes from their average use to their peak use. And then you have water efficiency, which is a small number, but then we're able to then allocate that to tier 2, where most of that conservation and water efficiency efforts would be realized. So as I mentioned, the released water, you're not going to incur that cost till 2026, but it's still a cost component that we'll do for the future years. Your fixed charge in 24 is 56%, and then the variable components will recover 44%. Right now, you're at 55%. And one thing important to point out is that this will recalibrate every year, especially in the years where now you do incur more purchased water costs. So as the costs on the variable side increase, because it increases, then you're still going to generate the same amount of revenue or more, but the percent is going to change slightly just because you have a new cost come online. So to show those fixed charges with 2024, you now have the account services, what I said is the same charge for every single account. The size of the meter does not matter. But then the meter capacity, that's where those that have a bigger size meter gets allocated more of the cost because of the amount of capacity they take in the system. And then compared to your existing fixed charges, we're also showing where you are and what the difference is. And remember, this is full CIP, that 16% revenue adjustments. It already accounts for that. So most of your customers are 1 inch, then that'll be around an $8 increase on their fixed charge. Now, when we go to the variable side, we first have to talk about the changes in rate structure. So when we look at tiered rate, one thing, as you know, the district is within adjudicated basin. Your free production allowance continues to ramp down each year. So what we want to do is have the cost of service analysis model this annual ramp down through 2029. So as an example, in 24, you're at 50% of your total water rights for your free production allowance. And then that's ratcheting down by 5% every year through 2029 to reach a 25% total amount. So it's going to get reduced by 75%. So your total amount free production allowance will be 25% of your total water rights. So when we're looking at tiers, we're recommending adjusting your tiers to be 2 tiers reflecting your groundwater rights and your free production allowance. And then tier 1 would allocate your free production allowance to all customers evenly. So all your customers are part of your system. They all bought into your system. They all have equal rights to your groundwater. So then tier 1 would represent the amount of groundwater available spread evenly to determine what the tier is. And for 24, spreading that groundwater to everybody, it would be 11 units of water that everyone would be able to use at the groundwater, for groundwater. And then tier 2 would capture usage above the available free production allowance. But as I mentioned, 24 and 25, you have carryover water available to cover the excess demand without needing leased water. But then in 26, 27, 28, you would need leased water to cover the demand that would show up in tier 2. So your demand is always going to end up being more than your free production allowance, causing you to have to purchase imported water or purchase water. So with the structure, we recommend that all customers are subject to this 2-tier rate structure, reflecting the water rights and the free production allowance. So it would be great signaling. It's a correlation, tells the story of what's going on at the district with your water production, with your water master, that, look, we're giving everyone equal share of groundwater. And then tier 2 for the water supply component would be the same rate for the first 2 years, but then in 26 beyond is where we'll see a bigger differential between tier 1 and tier 2. So looking at variable components, as I mentioned, you have water supply, the delivery, peaking, and water efficiency. So in 24, the water supply for groundwater is $1.54. That's primarily energy and some of your basin assessment. And then 25, because we have increased costs, it goes up a little bit. But you'll notice that for tier 1 and tier 2, these are the same unit rate. They're not different. So the only difference in these tiered rates in 24 and 25 is the peaking component, based on tier 2 customers put a higher demand on the system, and water efficiency, where we're allocating that total cost, which was a small number, around 36,000, to tier 2, because that's the usage that you're trying to curtail for those programs. So the differentials isn't much. It's around, 75 cents or so, and about 80 cents here. And then when we go to 26 through 27, this is where now one thing that I have to point out, because the free production allowance is ratcheting down, then every year your tier allotment for tier 1 is also going down because your free production allowance is being reduced. So then when we spread that over all your customers evenly, in 26, instead of 11 units, it goes down to 9. In 27, it goes down to 8, and in 28, it goes down to 7. So again, your rate structure is providing signaling and communication to your customer what's going on with the district, and in particular with your free production water rights. Then you'll also notice now the water rights are different. Still groundwater that isn't fully used in tier 1, because not every customer uses their full 9 units every single month throughout the year. So because of that, there is some groundwater that goes to tier 2. And then this water supply is a blend of the remaining groundwater and the cost of leased water from Mojave. Still, it's a bigger differential. And then we still have the differential with peaking and water efficiency. Then now you'll see a big difference in tier 1 and tier 2 in these later years compared to the first 2 years. And then showing the fixed charges for the full capital plan of all 5 years. I have your existing rates. Here's that $8 difference. And then after that, basically these rates increase by the revenue adjustment, where it's 16% increase, another 16%, so on and so forth. And then on the variable side, you'll see again, we did a cost of service for every single year because of we have to model a reduction in the tiered width. We have to model the increase in the leased water. But it's almost like doing 5 rate studies for this study right now. And here are your existing rates. All customers are going to be subject to the same tiers, the same rate. And then, so even though commercial institutions were uniform, they are then going to be on the same 2-tiered rate structure. So essentially, if you think about it this way, you don't really have customer classes. All customers are subject to 2-tier rate structure that's driven based on your groundwater rights and your free production allowance. And then for the full capital, here's your customer impact for your single family customer. We're showing a 1-inch meter because that is the majority of our customers. And then we're showing 3 different usage increments, 9 units, which is someone that's pretty efficient and stay in tier 1, 13 units where they're in tier 2 by 2 units, and then someone that uses a lot of water, you have 19 units. So we're comparing the existing bill versus proposed, and we're showing the dollar amount difference and the percent increase in their bill. So keep in mind, we need, in this scenario, we need 16% revenue adjustment, but the bill impact is actually lower than that. And that's primarily because your other customers are going to be on 2 tiers as well. And then I also wanted to show you with the reduced capital, the 5-year schedule. And so this is quite a little bit lower. It's around a $6 increase, and then you're about $4, $2, so on and so forth. And then with the variable rate, it's just smoothing out. It's less than the full capital because now we're at 11%. So there's still a nice differential when you get to 26 and 28, but you'll notice like even, tier 2 doesn't even get over your current tier 3 in this scenario. And the other thing with this one is then you also don't have to segregate your revenue from when tier 3 was for the potential need of well 14 and Antelope Valley water. Now you're able to, you don't need to monitor that or do the accounting in relation to this rate structure. And then here's the impacts. Again, same usage increment. And then this was 11% revenue adjustment. But again, you see that each one of these are lower than that 11% requirement. And then you'll notice that it kind of goes, it's higher than lower than higher. That's primarily because your low users here, majority of their cost is the fixed charge. So the fixed charge is almost covering most of this dollar amount increase. So they don't have much room in their usage to absorb that. Whereas with this one, they use more water, they benefit from all the reduced units of water, and then that's how it's a little bit, slightly less. And then with that, I can show, answer any questions or go over any other type of scenarios you would like. But in terms of next steps, we would like the board, if so being today, to select the preferred financial plan and corresponding rate, or provide me feedback with some other alternatives you want to see. But then after we finalize the rates, I'll be drafting a report for your administrative record. The district will prepare a property notice. And the goal is to have a public hearing in October, but that's coming up pretty fast, where you have to send out notices 45 days in advance. So you have to be sending out notices probably by the end of August, early September. So with that concludes my presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have, including from staff as well.
All right. Start down there.
I don't have any questions.
Questions? Chuck?
I apologize because I missed the meeting last week, but I like the methodology and the free production allowance and how you allotted it equally across the tier 1 customers, and then the different scenarios with the reduced capitals. So I'm sure we'll have further discussion, and the second meeting is scheduled already? Has not been scheduled, okay.
So the goal of this evening was to come up with a preferred plan so we could begin the process of noticing.
Good.
Okay, how sure are you that CPI will return to historic norms?
I'm not, but I think that we're seeing right now that inflation is getting under control. And I am reflecting a high inflation for all of fiscal year 24. So it's not going to go back to a reduction of the average, which includes that high inflation of this last year as well, until 25. So we still have another 12 months for it to reside or maintain where it's at right now.
Okay, and what are some of like the other increases you're seeing other agencies are facing comparative? Is this on the lower end or the higher end?
Surprisingly, you are somewhat on the lower end right now. So in calendar year 2023, we had two agencies where they were single-digit revenue adjustments, which was really good. But then we have down in northern San Diego, 50% increase on wastewater, and water is 15%. Orange County, we just finished public hearing 2 weeks ago. Both water and wastewater, both of them, each 25% increases and 20% increases in the following year. I'm going to rate workshops, community workshops up in Northern California for Calaveras County, and that one as well. Both water, wastewater, over 20% increases for multiple years. Let's see if I have any others. So those are the main ones that we have, and then some of them are subject. It's also an issue with debt coverage, that they have to show that they're covering their debt, and most of them is also driven by their capital spending, and that really not the spending, but more the cost of their projects are just increasing so much from the inflation, as well as still supply chain issues.
Okay, and is Tier 3 just going to be completely removed, or is it still going to be there? It'll be gone for
Correct.
we'll go back to only 2 tiers. Okay.
It's going to go back to 2 tiers, and Tier 3 is going to be eliminated, and it's going to correlate very well with, like I said, your water rights and free production allowance.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so currently, right now, our Tier 1 is 9. So what we're proposing is to go back to 11 again for the next 2 years?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so that will directly correlates with the free production allowance reductions that we have in the carryover water. And just a little bit of history here. The district, since it was formed in 2008, has spent approximately $14 million acquiring water rights, which has saved us a substantial amount of money over the past years. But as they keep ramping us down, we're to the point in a couple of years where the water that we had excess and we're able to carry over due to the purchases are going to be, it goes away. Our production will be down to 25% of the water rights we have established, and that's per the adjudication with Mojave. From our perspective at staff, I really like the Tier 1 and Tier 2 because the Tier 1 is divided equally. If we have X amount of water divided over so many customers and it comes out to 9 units, everybody is paying that same equal rate. The ones who do not conserve, they're the ones who are going to cause us to import water, and that's where you see that different increment come in. But that really, it doesn't sound like it's going to hit for a couple of years. And from what staff is doing too, we will be looking, immediately, we've been looking over the years to acquire different methods of getting more water, whether it be long-term leases. There's only a couple of other people who have water rights in the Oeste Basin, and we will be working on it. They're really not producing their water, so I'm optimistic that we might be the only ones in the market for that. So that could help push some of this out further. We're having to look at the worst case scenario. If somebody doesn't want to lease us water, then we have to go through Mojave. But I think we can get it cheaper, and we will be doing everything we can do to acquire that water.
Okay.
And that 9 units broken down into layman's terms, that ends up being 217 gallons per day per capita per person and at the household at 9 units. So that's 217 gallons a day.
Mhm.
Okay, and then on the two proposed plans, we said 16% and 11% adjustment, but on the slides that he showed, it doesn't, they don't actually reach that. So Lori, as far as our reserves and operating expenses, where does that leave us? Because we're not quite making that 11 in his slide, and we're not quite making the 16.
Well, overall, I believe we are, aren't we, Habib?
Yeah, so that's the thing. The only way it will correlate 1-to-1 is if like it was gasoline, where it's 100% variable. Then it will be directly related. But you know, I'm showing you a 1-inch meter. Your impact to your customers is going to vary based on one, what size meter they have, because you collect, you know, 55% of your revenue on the meter, on the fixed charge, and then you also have variable rates that vary by tiers. So your every single customer is going to have a different impact based on meter size and their total usage. But overall, in aggregate, this is recovering the revenue adjustments that your enterprise needs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, if I understood it correctly, was whether it's the 11% or the 16% or 17%, will our reserve goals be met? I think
Yes.
is what you're asking.
Yeah.
And the answer to both of those is yes. The difference between the two is the capital improvements. And when we're talking capital improvements, we're talking new wells that would be needed, tanks that would be needed, new things in the system that would need to be done that have already been planned out for a number of years. So it would be removing those and kicking the can down the road. Other districts do that, and at some point it catches up to you. You know, you have to have that infrastructure in place. You either pay for it now, or you pay for it later, and you probably pay substantially more, and you also miss out on the potential for the cost savings in between. If you look at our the cost for electrical is over $1 million a year for our Edison bills, and they keep going up every year. If we have storage that's planned in our capital improvement plan, we can store more water, we can pump at different times when the electrical rates are cheaper, and so we can achieve some efficiencies. So that's the argument for both sides. The other one is you're kicking it down the road, and at some point it will catch up.
Okay. Okay. All right, so looks like we need a consensus. Which way?
Have me started.
I can fire off. if you
Yeah,
want.
absolutely.
No,
Please.
Good presentation on the budget. I understand all the different aspects of it, the budgeted rates, the tiered systems, the capital improvement. I lean towards funding our capital 100%. You got to remember 80% of our infrastructure is buried that we don't see. I usually tell people, you want to get a good glimpse of our system, go up on the hill, and every light that you see down in the valley that we service, there's a buried water line to feed that house. So Don brings up a good point, off-peak pumping and storage. It's good that we put capital into our system now, or we pay later. I've experienced that at previous employers where you kick the can down the road and then you're caught against the wall when a failure happens, and then you're paying to get it done in an emergency, and it costs you twice as much. So if we've got a good capital improvement plan that's thought out, that I've seen so far, and we systematically go in and do those, I think it's a service to our customers that we get that done. It's investing in our infrastructure so we can provide reliable, safe drinking water.
So that would be option one, correct, for you? Okay, Chuck?
I feel like I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I wasn't here for the first meeting, but I also agree with investing in the infrastructure and the CIP, making sure we're supplying safe, reliable water for the customers. And I know there is savings, like you said, if you can put in storage and do some different improvements in areas and Edison bills and pumping costs and things like that. So I would be for that also, the full CIP plan.
Okay, Deborah?
I'm agreeing that you don't want to put off repairs longer than what you need, or any improvements that ultimately will cause savings later down the line. In addition to that, I know that we would be in a lot worse shape if we don't do something, because we'll be continue behind the 8 ball, and don't want that anymore happening with how much the area has improved with our water sources compared to where they were when the ditch was first formed. Want to keep the path that we're already on going. I'm leaning towards the 16 as well.
Option 1, okay. I agree. I mean, everything that Habib showed and everything that Dawn just said about, making sure that we're, keeping everything running, I agree. Option 1 is the way to go.
I also know that we have to implement it every year going forward. It wouldn't automatically be something in place. Each year we'd have to reevaluate it at no more than what we set it at. It could always go in less if we needed it to as well.
That's correct, and that and that has happened. And thank you for your comments about the other systems. I'm going to pick on the county because
why not?
Zone J is a big, easy target. The county special districts managed Zone L and Zone G prior to 2008 when we took over, and we had to put millions and millions of dollars into the system to get it to where we could just get enough water for our customers during the summer. I mean, it was a fire drill to try to get make sure all the tanks had water in them in the summer. It was crazy. And we're to the point now where we're probably in the best position we've ever been in, and we don't want to go back to that. The county, as I reported last meeting, they lost a couple of wells because they hadn't maintained them. They just didn't have the funds to do that. They lost the wells. We had to supply them with water, and we thank them for the check for the water that we did sell them.
All right.
Actually, it was a construction rate. And when if we have to supply water to another agency, one of the things we look at, unless we have an established rate, some kind of contract, the people who live on the other side of Baldy Mesa Road, which is kind of the boundary between the two, have not paid anything into our system to improve the system. So when you're looking at, when you connect your meter, you're paying for infrastructure, you're paying for the tanks, the wells, the water lines. None of that has been paid. So when that fee was calculated for that construction rate, it's where they have not paid any kind of a connection fee to our system. So that way it's not putting a burden on our customers. They're having to pay their own way. And we think that's fair.
Yeah. All right, so consensus looks like option 1.
I have to add, it's better than what it was last week when we were looking at 18. I'm very thankful we were able to narrow it down a bit.
That's true.
And again, maybe we won't have to do the full 16 every time too either.
Yes, Habib did, I think, a terrific job. If you see the number
Yeah.
of spreadsheets they have going, it's incredible. And how they come up with some number that everybody can understand at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's very good. This, by taking the approach that the board is moving forward with, it will keep our reserves in a healthy position. It took a long time to get the reserves. You have your replacement reserves, disaster reserves. You have reserves for emergencies. And you have the cash in the bank till you can, get everything back into where it needs to go. And then you may have some FEMA money coming in. But at least we are staying in a healthy position with that approach.
Agreed. All right.
Thank you so much. The direction I receive is we'll go with scenario 1 with the full CIP, and then I'm going to have to start drafting a report. That'll take me a little bit of time, but I'm sure the district staff and attorney is going to need some time to draft the notice as well. So we'll shoot to make sure that everything's ready to go, and knows to get out on time for an October public hearing date. And then I guess that could just something needs to be, discussed with me on what date that would be, and then I'll make sure I'm there in person.
Good. All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so we will move on to 6F, update on the proposed Civic Center and Phelan Park expansion.
Just a very brief update since George isn't here. We did withdraw our application for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant with the state for $1 million just because the timing issues with an existing project and the land disturbance and all these other federal requirements would preclude us from doing anything on the site, and that doesn't match up with our current timeline for other projects. So we'll try again if they offer the grant next year.
All right, thank you. Any questions? No? All right. So we will move on to 7, committee reports. Engineering, we did not meet. Finance? Did you? Not a recent one? All right,
Haven't met recently.
thank you. Legislative?
There's been no meeting, meet next month.
All right. Park and Rec, we met yesterday and went over current events. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up for the kids for the holidays, baking and arts and crafts and stuff. And of course, that visit from the big guy at the end of the year, we're working on it, so. And waste and recycling?
We meet next week at the new time, which will be Wednesday at 3.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so moving on to number 8, staff and general managers report. Anything to add?
I don't think there's anything further.
No worries. All right, directors reports. We will start with Deborah.
On the 27th of last month, I attended the Women in Water function, and they went over how to best organize your time to where you're not overwhelmed with your day events and your night events. Make sure you keep them separated and keep your life moving in a healthy direction. I think that was all I've done in the last. Oh, I attended the TAC meeting last week as well, and I must say that the sight of snow up on the hill was very impressive to people, and I'm very thankful to Director Snyder for helping with those photos since he wasn't able to attend. Everybody's so pleased to see the numbers. It's very impressive. That's it.
Right, thank you. Greg?
Yeah, you mentioned we had a Parks Committee meeting yesterday, and they just went over the programs and the attendance, and some of the larger attendees were the farmers market, the teaching garden were the big hits, and then we talked about the upcoming holiday events that are going to take place, and threw some ideas around about that. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Chuck?
No comment.
All right. And my report for July is in the packet for the ASB CSD dinner. And so if you have any questions on that. Okay, we will move on to item 10, correspondence and information. Ms. Sevi?
Yes, we have just our flyers in the packet. We have our cleanup coming up September 9th. And a free tire disposal day. You can bring up to 9 residential tires, or 9 tires, residents only, no commercial, from 8 to 12 at the CR in our yard. And then, of course, some information on our meters, our smart meters, and our application for trash service is in the packet as well.
All right, thank you. All right, item 11, were there any prior meeting action items?
We just had the one about the fuel storage upgrade, which will be coming as an agenda item to the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. And current meeting action items?
I have recorded none.
All right, thank you. And then we will set agenda for next meeting, August 23rd. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to that? No? All right, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we will recess to close session at 6:05 PM. Thank you.